Where is the king? That was the question from the Magi. Where is the king? Would you just say that with me? Where is the king? Of all the questions we can ask in life, I would suggest that that is the most important question of all. Where is the king? You've probably heard that famous Christmas story about the little Catholic boy in Italy who was not looking forward to Christmas at all. He lived in a town that was firmly in the grip of the mafia. In fact, his dad worked for the mafia, and in his house he had a big mafia office and a big mafia desk and a big mafia safe. Inside were all the big mafia secrets. This little Catholic boy was not looking forward to Christmas because he knew that it was only good little boys who got presents at Christmas, and if that was the case, he was well and truly stuffed. And so he had to think about what he might do, and he decided he needed to take action. So he went into his bedroom, and like every good little Catholic boy, he had a figure of the Virgin Mary. He put the figure of the Virgin Mary on his desk, and he started to write a letter. Dear baby Jesus, it is Christmas soon, and I would like to receive lots of lovely presents. If I promise to be good for a whole month, will you make sure this happens? He signed it, he read it, he thought about it. Sadly, he shook his head, he threw away the letter. He got out another piece of paper. Dear baby Jesus, it is Christmas soon. I would like to receive lots of lovely presents if I promise to be good for a whole week and do whatever my mum and dad say. Will you make sure this comes about? He signed it, and once again, he read it, he thought about it, shook his head, threw away the letter. Another piece of paper arrived. Dear baby Jesus, it is Christmas soon. I would like to receive lots of lovely presents if I promise to be good for a whole day. Do whatever mum and dad say. I'm kind to my brothers and sisters. Eat all my greens. Will you make sure this happens? He signed it, he read it, and yet again, would you believe, he sadly shook his head and he threw away the piece of paper. Then he had an idea. And very carefully took the figure of the Virgin Mary out of his bedroom. He went downstairs to his mafia dad's big office. He went past the mafia desk and he went to the big mafia safe, and very carefully he placed in the figure of the Virgin Mary, closed the door, went back to his room, got out another piece of paper, and he started to write. Dear baby Jesus, if you want to see your mother again, dear baby Jesus. But indeed, we're not thinking about baby Jesus. Our theme this evening is about King Jesus. Is about King Jesus. It is about 2,000 years ago, God sending his son to be a king. Of course, we have a very romantic view often of that first nativity. We see all the pictures on the cards of Mary and Joseph and the baby and the shepherds and the wise men. But the reality of that first Christmas was very different to this romantic view that we've got. It was very much a difficult event. Here's Mary and Joseph going on a long journey. A census had been called. She couldn't stay at home. She had to go on a long journey on the back of a donkey. God, what on earth are you playing about? She arrives somewhere where she didn't know, and hopefully there would be a there would be a hotel and not a stable. But we know there wasn't a hotel. There wasn't an inn. God, what are you playing at? No maternity unit, just a bunch of shepherds on hand. God, what are you playing at? In the muck and the mess and the pain and the difficulty, God was at work. In that first Christmas, we have Herod and the slaughter of the innocents. We have Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus having to flee for their lives as refugees. God, what are you playing at? In the muck and the mess, God was at work and a king was born. And that's really important because for so many of us, we live in the muck and mess of life. Life isn't always brilliant and fun and wonderful. It rarely is. For most of us, there are struggles and pain and difficulty, and it's so important to remember that in that first nativity, in the muck and the mess and difficulty of life, God was at work and a king was born. And it gives us hope that in the muck and the mess and the difficulty of the life we live, God can still be at work. Even when we wonder, God, what are you playing at? What are you playing at? What he's playing at is this, that a king is to be born. A king who will change lives and change destinies. It was Charles Wesley who wrote in one of his hymns, "Our God contracted to a span, incomprehensibly made man." It's one of those amazing truths that actually could mess with your mind if you let it. That the Jesus who was there at the beginning of time with God the Father, who spoke the worlds into being, allowed himself to be contracted, to become an embryo and to be born. And then would grow, and in his growing would become aware of who he was. Amazing that God would take something as precious as his only son and allow him to be born into the muck and mess and difficulty of life. But that is for us. God allows his grace to be seen so often in the frailty of our journey. Oh God, it would be great if life were so much easier. But this side of heaven, that isn't often the case. And so often we're called to make Jesus king in the mess and in the difficulty and in the doubt when there are more questions than answers. Why? Because that's the real test of our faith. The test of our faith is not when things are always great. The test of our faith is when things are challenging. It's interesting, this week I've been contacted by 2 radio stations who wanted me to comment on the recent census. You might be aware there's been a census from last year. And the big news, amongst many other things, was the change in religious views. And so for the first time ever, less than 50% of the country say that they are Christian. It used to be over 60, now it's less than 50. The numbers of people who say they've got no religion has gone up, and so it's about 1/3 of people. And the radio stations both wanted to ask me if I thought it was bad news. And I tried to put a positive spin on it, because that's what I do. The truth of the matter is this. Am I really concerned? I don't think I am. Why? Because just because someone says they're a Christian doesn't mean that they've made Jesus king. There are a lot of people who believe in God and think Jesus was a nice man who said some good and interesting things, but it doesn't mean that they've made Jesus king. Just because you believe in God, it doesn't mean that you're actually a follower of Christ. You can believe in God, but not be like the Magi who are saying, "Where is the king? Where is the king?" Last night, I went out for a school reunion. And so it was our school reunion Christmas meal. So about 15 of us went to Hanley. I can't believe I'm as old as the people I was sitting opposite, but allegedly, seemingly, I am. And whilst we were there, one of the guys, who's a bit of a character, to be honest, as we were chatting, he just came over to me and he said, "You're one of those born-again Christians, aren't you?" With a twinkle in his eye. And I sort of smiled and I nodded and I said yes. And then he went off and talked to somebody else. Had he stayed, I'd have actually said to him, "Actually, there is no other sort, you know. That's the only sort that there is. Those who've recognized that their life is in a mess, who recognize the claims of Jesus, who have given their lives to Christ, repented of their sin, and made him Lord and King. Who've been born again because they've made Jesus King." It was interesting when I saw the playlist and I saw that Sam had chosen the song All Hail King Jesus, because actually I was thinking of an older one. I was showing my great age. And some of you might remember there was an old chorus with the same name. All hail King Jesus, do you remember it? All hail Emmanuel, King of kings, Lord of lords, bright morning star. And throughout eternity, I'll sing your praises and I'll reign with you throughout eternity. All hail King Jesus, all hail Emmanuel, King of kings, Lord of lords. This Christmas, A babe is born into the muck and mess, and he is king. This Christmas, in the muck and mess of our lives, of the challenges that we face, the most important thing to remember again is that question, where is the king? Is to make him king and to choose to follow him again. No matter how good, no matter how bad life is, because he is king and he deserves to be worshipped with all our hearts, with all our strength, with all our commitment. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for sending your Son into the muck and mess of this world with all its brokenness and sinfulness. We thank you that you took the chance of sending your best for the world's worst, that we might know hope and that we might know life. Lord, once again, this Christmas time, we make Jesus King. Jesus, we declare that you are King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We commit our lives to you afresh and draw close to you in your precious name.
As we continue in a prayerful way, I'm going to ask if the band will just play quietly in the background. Just reflect on where we are in our walk with King Jesus, where we are within our own lives, within our struggles and our battles. Where we are in terms of handing those difficult things over to God, allowing him to be king of our lives when it feels really costly. When it feels really tough. When we might feel like throwing the towel in. And what does it look like for us to recognize King Jesus in the mess and the muck? For some of us, we might be sharing in those words, where is the King? Where are you, Jesus? But the voice of faith and the voice of experience would say, I am here. I'm with you. Do not be afraid. God, who is so much bigger than anything we can contain within our human thinking and understanding. God, who is bigger than any problems or struggles we might face. God, who is able to take the mess and the muck of our own lives and redeem. God, who is able to be at work within our lives, within the life of our churches and our communities and our world. How is God speaking to you this evening? What is King Jesus saying? The challenge The call is for us to bring who we are to God, as weak and as resourceless as we might feel. To come and say, God, this is who I am and this is what I have. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet, what I can, I give him. Give my heart. So I just encourage us to remain seated in the stillness of this place, this safe place. God is here, and that is the best of news. God is King, and that is the best of news.